What up there, Mikey Scrooge? Good friend Michael here. And welcome sports fans as well to another edition of Sports Talk. Today we're going to be diving into the Western Michigan-Toledo game and how I was so worried about it, yet it turned into a Western Michigan victory. A big one at that. Toledo was no match for the Broncos in this game. I'll also be talking about Michigan's loss to Ohio State, controversial loss, and we'll dive into the official controversy as well. There's 3 officials in this game that shouldn't have even really been on the field. We'll talk about everything else going around college football and run down the NFL scoreboard. And we'll talk about the college football playoff. All that coming up next here on Sports Talk. All right, let's begin by talking about the college football playoff rankings, which have just come out. We'll start at the bottom. We'll work our way up. Pittsburgh comes in ranks at number 25. Houston, surprisingly, with a loss to a team outside of the top 25 and that has multiple losses, have remained in at number 24. Virginia Tech 23, Tennessee 22, LSU 21, Utah's 20. Navy moves up to 19, and now this is the team that Western Michigan is now fighting with a spot to go to the Cotton Bowl, possibly. Stanford is 18, and this is where Western Michigan is 17, so that's a 2-spot gap. Now, last week, that was a bigger gap. It was a 4-spot gap. Now it's a 2-spot. Now, to tell you the truth, Western Michigan should be ranked ahead of a few teams ahead of them here. Now, not just because they have losses, but because these teams lost actually this past weekend. West Virginia sits at 16. Florida lost to Florida State 31-13 and still remains at 15. That's surprising to me. I'm surprised they didn't drop. Now, Western does have a shot to probably move up one more spot because Florida probably is going to lose to Alabama this week, and Florida should rightfully drop below Western after that. Auburn only dropped 1 spot to 14 after losing to Alabama 30-12. That team should be below Western as well. Louisville lost to Kentucky. They only dropped 2 spots to 13. They lost to a team that had 5 losses on the season, and they're still ranked inside the top 25, or still ranked above Western, I should say, not inside the top 25. But the Western should be up to 14, and I wonder if the playoff committee is like, well, we're not going to move them up that high because now we're not going to give Navy a chance to move up there. And you know what? No disrespect to Navy, and I'm not trying to disrespect any branch of the military here, but Navy is completely undeserving right now of going to the college football playoff. You compare their resumes, Western's undefeated, Navy has 2 losses. Yes, Navy may have beat Houston, but Houston's been so up and down late in the year. You know, I don't think that's it's still a good win, but it's not a great quality win. Western's done all they needed to do. They've gone undefeated to this point. If they beat Ohio in the MAC championship Saturday, there should be no doubt, or not Saturday, but Friday, there should be no doubt this team goes to the Cotton Bowl. There should not be a discussion whether it's Western or Navy going. Now, if Temple defeats Navy on Saturday, there is no discussion. Western is the team in the power from the group of 5 that is going to the Cotton Bowl. But however, if Navy wins, say Western wins big, Navy wins big. How do you compare that? Okay, Navy beat a 9-win team, Western beat an 8-win team. What's the big difference there? They might even say, well, now here's the thing. It could come down on Sunday where they unveil the college football playoff and the New Year's 6 bowls, and I think the whole bowl selection thing is over at that point too. It could come down to the point where they say, well, the Cotton Bowl hasn't selected it, or the college football playoff committee is not slotting Western in the Cotton Bowl, because Navy still has 1 more game to go. And if that is the case, that means if Navy probably were to defeat Army, they would stick Navy in the Cotton Bowl versus Western Michigan. I can already tell you that right there. Number 1, it's in Texas, and they're going to look at that simply as saying, well, we got Navy's got a big fan base down here. We've got naval bases down here in Texas. Navy's going to travel better. We're going to want them over an undefeated Western team. Which I think if it literally comes down to that is complete hogwash. It shouldn't come down to that. It should be what you do on the football field. Navy hasn't done everything they needed to do. They've lost 2 games this year. Now, like I said, they go beat Temple, Western beats Ohio. and the Cotton Bowl still, it's still undecided who's going to be Western or Navy, because Navy still would have that game against Army. I can guarantee you right now, like I just said, Navy beats Army, they're going, because if both win and Western's still undefeated and has 0 games left at that point, you would say, okay, they've done all they need to do. They're in the Cotton Bowl. Sorry, Navy. I mean, I know you have 1 game left, but you're not in. But if they're still undecided at that point, with a Navy victory, they'd be going and they would leave Western out. I can already see it happening. So, and if that happens, that's a disgrace. That's a disgrace to any Group of 5 team, because that almost says then, as a Group of 5 team, well, you can go undefeated and you're still not considered good enough to go to a big bowl game. And at that point, if I'm Western's players, I'm outraged, I'm disgraced, and I boycott a bowl game. And I'm serious. I would do it. I'd say, okay, if you guys are going to disgrace us this much, you're not going to give us any respect, we're not going to any bowl game. Don't count us in at all. So hopefully Western wins big. Hopefully somehow Temple beats Navy, and then we don't have to have this discussion coming next week where I would be furious and outraged with the possibility of a 2-loss team jumping Western, who, like I said, they've done everything on the field that they possibly can. They beat every opponent up to this point. And if they go and beat Ohio, that should be the team in the Cotton Bowl. Not a team like Navy, who has lost 2 games on this season. Just saying. All right, moving on. Number 12, Florida State. 11's USC. Number 10 is Oklahoma State. Number 9 is Oklahoma. 8 is Colorado. Penn State does not move up. They stay at 7. Wisconsin stays at 6. Michigan dropped to 5. Washington is 4. Clemson 3. Ohio State 2. And Alabama 1. First off, looking at the top 10 now, you can without a doubt say Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, the winner of that game, is not going to the playoff. No Big 12 champion will be in the playoff this year. They will be one conference that is left completely out. Now, what is interesting is Michigan sitting there at 5, could find their way possibly back into the playoff with a Washington loss. Now here's the thing that could be up for debate. Washington plays Colorado in the Pac-12 title game. If Colorado beats Washington, does Colorado belong in the playoff, or do you slot Michigan in there? Or do you slot the winner of the Wisconsin-Penn State game in the playoff over Michigan? Michigan beat both of those teams. That's a hard decision for the playoff committee to make, and I wouldn't want to make it. Here's my opinion right now. Colorado is too far back, I think, at number 8 to go to the playoff, even if they win. You'd be jumping a Big Ten champion who has a stronger conference in the Pac-12 this year. You'd also be jumping a team in Michigan who you lost to earlier this year. Therefore, I would say if Washington were to lose, Michigan gets slotted into the playoff. Washington obviously is out. They don't have a chance. Now, Clemson wins, they're in. Here's the thing about Ohio. Alabama, they could win or lose, in my opinion, and they're in the playoff. I'm just saying that flat out right now. Ohio State sitting at number 2. Will they remain in the top 4 and be in the playoff? Because they do not play for a conference title game. That's what's between Wisconsin and Penn State. Do they remain in the playoff spot? If Clemson and Washington both win, do they jump Ohio State and Ohio State go from 2 to 4 and have to take on Alabama? Not only that, but do you drop Michigan to 6, Ohio State to 5, and put Wisconsin or Penn State in there? Now, Wisconsin lost to Ohio State, so I would say Wisconsin couldn't get in the playoff. But do you put Penn State in the playoff over Ohio State? Because Penn State beat them, remember. Now, Penn State did not beat Michigan. So it's a really tough thing for the committee to say, does Penn State belong? Because the playoff could be this. It could be Alabama, Clemson, Washington, and Penn State if Penn State wins. It could also end up being this if Penn State wins. It could also be Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, and if Colorado beats Washington, then it'd be Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Penn State. And those would be the 4 teams. Now, what if some ridiculous scenario happened where Clemson and Washington both lost? Say Virginia Tech beats Clemson, which I don't think it's going to happen. Colorado could beat Washington. I could see that one happening. But if Clemson and Washington both lose, at that point. Michigan, do you slot Michigan in, or do you slot the Big Ten champion and Colorado in? So Wisconsin or Penn State and possibly Colorado, do they all jump? Does two of those teams jump Michigan and get in? To me, Michigan sitting at number 5 right now could be a very dangerous. It's a spot where it's almost they can't get in no matter what. It's like they're right there at the door, but I don't know if they can get in. I'm just really saying that right now. The only way I think they get in is if Washington were to only lose. If Washington and Clemson were to lose, I don't think Michigan gets in, because then I think you got to put Wisconsin or Penn State in, the winner of the Big Ten title game, and Colorado in. Now, I could see it where maybe if Wisconsin wins, Michigan gets in and Wisconsin doesn't. However, if Penn State beats Wisconsin, Colorado beats Washington, Virginia Tech beats Clemson, your playoff would most likely be Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Penn State 3, Colorado 4. And those would be your 4 teams in. Michigan would get left out at number 5. Now, if Wisconsin beats Penn State, Washington were to lose, Clemson were to lose, then I would say you've got to put Michigan in at least number 3. And then, I would say then you got to put Colorado in. I don't think you could put Wisconsin in at that point. Colorado would be a champion, but so would Wisconsin. So, it's almost that kind of scenario where it's like you don't want to have to deal with it, but it could happen. The only one I could see really happening is Washington loses, and, Colorado can't really jump Michigan, in my opinion. So, it is possible that Colorado could jump them. It's possible Wisconsin could. It's possible Penn State could. So if Clemson and Washington were to both lose, does Michigan get in? That's the ultimate big question. Or if one of them were to lose, does Michigan get in? Or do you stick in there a Colorado team that they beat, or that Michigan beat, or Wisconsin that they beat, or Penn State that they beat? That's such a tough scenario. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. All right, so Western Michigan against Toledo last Friday. Big game. Winner goes to the MAC title game to take on Ohio, who ended up winning the MAC East with a tiebreaker over Miami of Ohio because they'd won the head-to-head matchup. Loser of this game was going to go home, and if that happened to be Western Michigan, a lot of Western Michigan fans would have been disappointed, and they probably would have started talking about, oh gosh, guess we didn't do all we could this season, and they're going to look at that bad. They would have looked at the bad there, and wouldn't have said, okay, we beat 2 Big Ten teams, we were ranked in the college football playoff, we're ranked in the AP poll for the first time, the coaches poll for the first time, we've done so many nevers this year, and they looked at this one game if Western had lost. But they ended up winning the game, so Toledo's the one that has to go home and wait for a bowl game, but beyond that, if they won, they would have went to 10-2, and then they would have possibly won the MAC title game. It would have been 11-2. But Western completes their first ever undefeated season, 12-0 in history, and started off with a bang as well. First play of the game, the first offensive play of the game, I should say, was for Toledo, and threw a pick 6. Logan Woodside threw a pick 6. Asante Brown cut on the route, picked it off, ran in the end zone for a touchdown. Probably the best first play I've ever seen when I'm attending a football game. The worst first play I ever saw was when Western was taking on Notre Dame, and Notre Dame threw like an 80-yard touchdown pass on the first play. That was the worst first play ever. This was the best first play I've ever seen. So that was great. Western started off with a 7-0 lead. Toledo went back down. They scored, tied it, and then Western promptly scored again to make it 14-7. Toledo cut it. I think Toledo tied it again, and then Western made it 17-14, but then Western scored right before the half, made it 24-14. They scored 21 third-quarter points, which was fantastic. They, intercepted Woodside again in the second half. They caused a fumble. 3 turnovers were a big difference in the game. Western went to the fourth quarter up 45-14. Yes, Toledo did score 21 fourth-quarter points, but they were kind of garbage points at that point. Western scored 10, including a Donnie Ernsberger touchdown, his first of the year. Well earned. He's been blocking all year. They've been getting him some touches lately. He in fact hurdled a receiver earlier in the game in the first quarter. So it was great to see Ernsberger earn his first touchdown of the year. Corey Davis had a great touchdown catch in the end zone. So did Carrington Thompson. And Corey Davis, by the way, became the all-time leading receiver in NCAA football history in yardage-wise on Friday as well. We were kind of waiting it took a while for it to happen. I was waiting for Zach Terrell to really hit Corey Davis. It took him, I think, till his third reception is when he ended up breaking the record. They did not announce it on the drive. They waited till we went to TV timeout before it was announced at Waldo Stadium that he had broken the record. Of course, you don't want it, during a football game. I mean, if you interrupt that, you interrupt the momentum of the drive, obviously, and now you're all distracted the rest of the drive. So they did a good job not, waiting to announce until after. Of course, on TV, as soon as they knew he had the record, they went ahead and said it. No big deal there. I mean, Corey Davis and P.J. Fleck are down on the field. They're not able to hear the TV going on. So anyways, stats for the game. Woodside, 13-24, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. How about Zach Terrell? What an incredible year this young man has had at quarterback for Western. He might not be the biggest stat leader in Western Michigan history in certain categories, but this guy knows how to hold on to the ball and make sure he does not commit any turnovers. 1 interception this entire year. 1. I think that was against Eastern Michigan. The only one he's thrown. 3 more touchdowns on Friday. 0 interceptions. So Zach Terrell, probably one of the greatest quarterbacks in Western Michigan history. Maybe not stat-wise, although he does have some really good stats as well. Go back and look at the video that I filmed against Toledo. They did mention that he did become the leader in some, I think it was passing yards, maybe in Mid-American Conference history, so I think he might lead that. But, he doesn't throw, the most touchdown passes. He only threw for 196 yards on Friday. Very efficient, 19-25, 3 touchdowns. So Zach Terrell, one of the greatest quarterbacks in Western Michigan history, no doubt in my mind. How about rushing the ball? Kareem Hunt for Toledo, 20 carries, 200 yards, 1 touchdown. Jamari Bogan, great to see him back. So he had fresh legs, 31 carries, 198 yards, and 1 touchdown. A 61-yarder was his longest. That was not a touchdown, but it did set up a field goal. Jarvion Franklin, 10 carries for 38 yards. So Western ended up with 249 yards on the ground on Friday. So that was great to see them have that balanced offensive attack. Receiving-wise, Davis ended up with 8 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. Carrington Thompson, 3 for 35 and a touchdown. And Ernsberger, 2 for 23 and a touchdown as well. So Western, of course, I said they forced a fumble. They did pick off 2 passes. I think Darius Phillips picked off the other pass. And Justin Tranquil led the Broncos with 9 tackles Friday as well. And let's see here. Butch Hampton was 2 for 2 on field goals. Of course, he didn't kick a long one. 23-yarder was his longest. So that's the stats, the individual stats for that game. Let's talk about the team stats now, which you're going to, from what I'm going to say here, team stats are going to sound pretty even. 456 yards for Toledo, 445 for Western. So that's pretty even. So where did Western win this game? Well, here you go. Time of possession for this game, 39 minutes, 27 seconds to 20 minutes, 33 seconds. Western had the ball for nearly 40 minutes in the game, and I said that was a key. Keep Toledo's offense on the sideline, pressure Woodside, force them into, throwing some interceptions, force them to turn the ball over, and Western did that. So 20 minutes, 33 seconds is all Toledo had it for. They were only 3 of 9 on third down. That didn't help them as well. Western was 10 of 15, so they were able to keep moving the ball down the field. Both teams were kind of heavily penalized. Toledo 9 times for 71 yards. Western 7 for 80. 3 turnovers, though, for Toledo. That also hurt them as well, because Western had, the pick 6, and then they had, immediately after the fumble, took it for a touchdown. Next play, I think it was a Carrington Thompson touchdown. Western had 25 first downs to Toledo's 20. So that was the stats from Friday's game against Toledo. Now, Western this week is going to end up playing Ohio with a spot to go to the Cotton Bowl on the line. That's only for Western. Ohio doesn't have a shot to go to the Cotton Bowl. They're just playing for a shot at the Mid-American Conference Championship game. Western's playing not only for the Mid-American Conference title, but they're also playing for a spot possibly in the Cotton Bowl. So we'll see if that happens. Western right now an 18.5-point favorite over Ohio. some keys to this game. We're going to go over that in a few minutes, but let's run down the Mid-American Conference scoreboard actually from Week 13 as well. And then we're going to run down Ohio's schedule. We'll tell you the opponents they faced. We can talk about the common opponents that Western faced as well against Ohio. So here's your scores from this past week in the Mid-American Conference. Ohio beat Akron 9-3. Miami of Ohio had to beat Ball State and have Ohio lose to have a chance to go to the MAC championship game. Miami of Ohio won 21-20. So they're the first team ever in NCAA history to start 0-6 and win 6 straight. They're bowl eligible. They will be going bowling because there are not enough bowl eligible teams. There's 80 bowl slots available, and there's only right now about 74 bowl eligible teams. There's a possibility of maybe 2 or 3 more, I believe. So it could end up being 77. So they'll have to put some 5 and 7 teams in some bowl games as well. So Miami, Ohio, with that terrible start they had, are going to be going bowling. So congrats to them. Eastern Michigan, they'll be going bowling as well for the first time since, I think it was 1988 was the first, since the last time. Or is it 95? 95 may have been the last time they were bowl eligible. But Eastern 7-5 on the year. They beat Central Michigan 26-21. How about Central Michigan? Started the season 3-0, and they finished 3-6 to wrap up the year. If they didn't have that controversial win over Oklahoma State, they would not be bowl eligible. Northern Illinois, 31-21 victory over Kent State. That gets them to 5-7 on the year. It is possible they could get chosen for one of those 5 and 7 slots. We'll have to see. And Bowling Green beat Buffalo 27-19. They wrap up their season 4-8 on the year. So let's run down Ohio's schedule really quickly just to kind of tell you who their other opponents were this year. So Ohio 8-4 on the year. So they started off with an opening loss to Texas State in a shootout, 56-54. Probably a game Ohio could have won. They could have been 9-3. They did beat Kansas 37-21. So I think it's Kansas, but it's still a Big 12. It's beating a Big 12 team, so that's still good. Now, they fought hard but lost to Tennessee 28-19. Another game they possibly could have won, but they didn't. They beat Gardner-Webb 37-21. Then they beat Miami, Ohio 17-7 and Bowling Green 30-24. However, they lost to Eastern Michigan 27-20. That is a common opponent right there. Western Michigan was able to beat Eastern. Ohio lost to them by 7. They beat Kent State 14-10, a team that Western beat 37-21. They beat Toledo 31-26. Western beat them 55-35. They beat Buffalo 34-10. Western will beat them 38-0. They lost to Central 27-20, which Western beat, I think it was like 49-10. And they beat Akron 9-3, which Western shut out 41-0. So if you go by the common opponents that Western faced, really out of all these teams that Ohio played, there was only 2 that Western did not play this year inside the conference. That is. So looking at those common opponents, you would think Western could just roll all over Ohio, and it is possible. It could happen. They could steamroll them. The conference championship game could be over by halftime for all we know. But you never know. Ohio's going to come to play this game. They're coached by Frank Solich. Do you remember when Frank Solich used to coach Nebraska? He got fired there for going 9-3 at Nebraska. 9-3 he went, and he got fired. That's awful to get fired when you go 9-3. It's saying, well, you did your job good, but you didn't do it well enough. You're gone. I mean, that's pretty bad. And that was at the time when, in the 90s, when everyone still looked at, or it was I think it was maybe the early 2000s he got fired from Nebraska, where everyone's still looking at Nebraska as this big football power, that they're dominant over everybody, which they weren't. And then they suffered for years after Frank Solich, really, under Bill Callahan. They started to come up under Bo Pelini, and they're starting to come back under Mike Riley. I mean, Nebraska's been better in years, but they haven't been that dominant force that they want them to be. But guarantee it now, if a coach goes 9-3, they're not firing them. They're giving Western, the football power index is giving Western a 91.3% chance to win this game. That's pretty good for a conference title game, because against Toledo, they only had about a 78% chance to win. So let's look at this for a minute, stats-wise. Zach Terrell, 30 touchdowns, 1 interception, thrown for 3,086 yards on the year. 228 for 318. Now, Windham is going to be Ohio's quarterback, most likely. They do kind of play two quarterbacks, so we'll have to see if he's the one that plays all game. 124, 220 for 1366 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So, as you can already see, Ohio's offense is not as potent as Western's. Jarvion Franklin, leading rusher for the Broncos, 232 carries, 1,266 yards, 12 touchdowns. How about Brown for Ohio? 794 yards on 140 carries, 4 touchdowns. So I don't know if that's Ohio spreading the ball out, or maybe they just don't have the prolific offense that Western does. So Corey Davis, 83 receptions, 1,283 yards, 17 touchdowns. To Smith of Ohio, the leading receiver, 50 receptions, 825 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And tell you how not prolific Ohio's offense is. Western averages 44.8 points a game to Ohio's 26.8. So Ohio does not score a whole lot. And to have an 8-4 record and not score means your defense has got to be good. Ohio only gives up 21.7 points a game to Western's 19.2. Western's averaging 503.6 yards a game, 257 through the air, 246 on the ground. Ohio's averaging 404 yards of offense, 218 through the air, 186 on the ground. So Western, key for them in this game is to stop Ohio's rushing attack, because I don't think their passing offense is going to be very prolific. It's going to be to stop that run more than anything. Yards allowed, Western 361.5 to Ohio's 359.8. So Ohio apparently might have the best defense in the Mid-American Conference, giving up 257 yards through the air, 105 on the ground. Western, 200 through the air, 160 on the ground. So that's why I'm going to say you've got to stop this rushing attack of Ohio. Now, Western is going to have to do something against this Ohio rush defense that's only given up 105 yards. So we'll have to see, can Jarvion Franklin, can Jamari Bogan bust through? Because if they become one-dimensional where they cannot run the ball, they're going to be able to stop Zach Terrell, Corey Davis, Carrington Thompson, Michael Henry. They're going to be able to stop those receivers. So Western's going to have to get the running game going, and they're going to have to stop the running game. Force some turnovers on Ohio as well, because this team is not very prolific on the offensive side of the ball. Do not let them drive down the field. So we'll have to see what's going to happen. It takes place Ford Field Friday, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Kathleen and I will be there. We'll definitely get you some highlights of the game. We're going to get in probably right close to kickoff time, so you might not see everything from kickoff on in. You might we might be picking it up first quarter, because I get out of work at 3, she gets out at 4. We're going to be busting our butts to get over there on time. We've got tickets, we've got a parking pass. We don't have to worry about that. We just have to pick them up at will call, and then we're going to have to get some food too. So we'll see. We'll try our best to get over there on time so you can see most of the game. So that was Western. That's previewing Western against Ohio for this upcoming weekend. Let's talk about Michigan-Ohio State now. Michigan, scoreless first quarter. Great to see. Then Wilton Speight throws a pick 6 after Michigan had taken a 3-0 lead on a Kenny Allen field goal. And I'm thinking at this point, oh gosh, can't be doing this against Ohio State if you're going to win. Well, they go down, they score a touchdown right before the half. Khalid Hill goes in, makes it 10-7. There was some pushing and shoving after the play, and I'm surprised the refs didn't call anything at that point. I'm like, how do you not call anything? Ohio State guys were pushing Khalid Hill to the ground after he scored the touchdown. He was just standing there, and they pushed him over. It was ridiculous. Jim Harbaugh got mad at the refs in this game. Well-deserved that happened. He's throwing things over on the sideline, not at the officials. He didn't throw anything at the officials, and he threw a flag on that play. He said they were more concerned about him staying in the coach's box than they were looking for offsides or false starts on Ohio State. And Ohio State's coaches are all over the place on the field. Go back and watch the game. You'll see what I'm talking about. But third quarter, Jabril Peppers picks off a pass. Michigan drives on. Then Wilton Speight fumbles it on the snap at the 2-yard line. I'm like thinking, oh my gosh. What can Michigan do to beat Ohio State? Because they're doing everything to lose against them. Well, then Ohio State decided to fake a punt deep in their own territory after the turnover. So Michigan got it back deep in their own territory. They got a touchdown. They made it 17-7 at this point. Then Wilton Speight throws another interception, and all of a sudden Ohio State gets another touchdown. They make it 17-14. Tyler Durbin then, and Ohio State, they drive down the field, and Tyler Durbin comes on, misses a 22-yard field goal. I'm thinking, this is it. Finally, the break that Michigan has needed, they're going to win this game. Nope, Ohio State drives right back down, ties the game 17-all. We go to overtime. Teams exchange touchdowns in the first overtime, 24-all. Michigan scores a field goal, a Kenny Allen field goal to make it 30-27, or not 30-27, 27-24. And then JT Barrett looks like he stopped on fourth down. Now, admittedly, it is hard to tell, did he get it or not? There was no sideline camera angle, unfortunately. I don't know why there was not one. But there was no sideline camera angle. So we didn't get to really see, did he get the first or not? And with the inconclusive evidence, they had to give him the first down. Could you imagine if, let's say, he was stopped short there, which he could have been, he may not have been. He may have been stopped short, he may not have been. Imagine if the refs had said he was stopped short, game over. Imagine the huge chorus of boos that would have rang through that stadium. Michigan's players would have sprinted for their life for the locker room. Refs would have sprinted their life for the locker room. Because I can guarantee it, those Ohio State fans would have started throwing things, would have been screaming and yelling. They would have probably started a riot right there in the city of Columbus. I'm not trying to say that, that's the way Ohio State fans are. But look at the Cleveland Browns game against Jacksonville, like from way back in the early 2000s, when the refs made a bad call. And the Browns fans threw bottles at the referees, which is uncalled for. And the refs had to call the game with like 45 seconds left because of these fans just throwing things onto the field and at the refs. There was no safety protection for the refs at all at that point. So I'm not saying that these refs in the Ohio State-Michigan game, if JT Barrett was stopped short, they were going to say he had the first. But imagine if they had said that, like Michigan players would have been fearing for their lives, refs would have been fearing their lives. Imagine if you're a Michigan fan in that stadium at that point. You're like, okay, I got to go right now because this is going to get really bad for me. And probably, like I said, stuff would have ensued outside the stadium. It would not have been good. But they get the first, and the next play, Curtis Samuel goes in, touchdown, Ohio State, they win. And they're probably going to the college football playoff because of that. Anyways, on the day, JT Barrett was not that great. He was good on the ground, which, he wasn't really running on the ground. He wasn't, running the ball, in the third quarter. Not until really the third quarter did he start running the ball. He was mainly passing. 15 of 32, 124 yards and an interception. Not good stats. And you would think if you hear that, Ohio State loses. But here's the stats on the ground. 30 carries, 125 yards and a touchdown. And he was able to find room in the third quarter, fourth quarter, overtime. And that's really what the difference was JT Barrett's legs late in the game. And Michigan's inability to move the ball, when they had chances to seal the game up. Wilton Spate, 23 of 36, 219 yards, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Michigan only had 91 yards on the ground, and that's been their bread and butter all year. Davion Smith, 21 carries, 60 yards. He was the leading rusher on the day. Ohio State had over 200 yards of rushing, by the way. Mara Darbo, 68 yards on 8 receptions, 1 touchdown. And Khalid Hill had the other touchdown, an 8-yard reception. So those were your individual stats. Let's look at the team stats. And by the way, Tyler Durbin did miss 2 field goals in that game, not just 1. He missed 2. He missed 1 in the first quarter that could have given Ohio State a 3-0 lead. So total yardage, Michigan 310 yards to Ohio State's 330. 31 minutes and 13 minutes of possession for Michigan at Ohio State's 28-47. It already sounds like Michigan's won this game. 9 of 19 on third down. Ohio State 3 of 16 on third down. Wow. That's impressive right there. 219 yards passing for Michigan to 124 for Ohio State. 206 rushing yards for Ohio State to 91 for Michigan. But here's the difference. Michigan had 3 turnovers on the day. A lost fumble, 2 interceptions. Both interceptions led to touchdowns. There's your difference right there. That, and if Tyler Durbin had probably missed those field goals, then, you know, the game would have been decided another way anyways. 24 Ohio State first downs to Michigan 17. Michigan 7 penalties, 59 yards. Ohio State 2 for 6. Now, there were definitely some missed penalties in this game. Pass interference penalties, personal foul penalties. What Jim Harbaugh would say, some false starts and some offsides. Holding penalties were missed on Ohio State this entire game. So, not good all around there as well. And you know what? It's possible refs miss penalties. But how many, you know, Jim Harbaugh is basically saying they missed a huge handful amount of penalties in this game. Not just like one or two. But, you know, missing blatant interference calls, especially one on Grant Perry in the overtime. I mean, that was a pass interference penalty, and they did not call it. So that was absolutely ridiculous. So let's go into this conspiracy theory, by the way, about the referees. So here we go. 3 referees are in question here in the Michigan-Ohio State game. The lead official was Daniel Capron. Back in 2002, he was fired by the Big Ten for poor officiating of a Purdue-Wake Forest game. This is what Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney said at the time, quote, "During the course of the game, these officials did not officiate well enough to meet Big Ten standards. Therefore, they will forfeit future officiating assignments." If that's the case, how did this guy land as the head official at this game, the Michigan-Ohio State game, if he was this poor of an official? And by the way, the Big Ten is not addressing any of this. They are not addressing any of these officials, and they need to come out and address something, because this is beyond ridiculous that they're not addressing anything at all about this situation, that this official and 2 others were allowed to be on this field officiating, especially when this guy was fired by the Big Ten. How in the world is he back on the field as a Big Ten official? To me, something is not right. Something is fishy here. And by the way, Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan were both fined as well. Jim Harbaugh complains about the refs. He gets fined. University of Michigan was fined $10,000, by the way, as well. It's absolutely ridiculous. All right, next guy. Kevin Schwartzel, the back judge, is an Ohio guy. Okay, he's fine. It's fine if he's from Ohio. I don't have a problem with that. Born in the state. He has businesses in Athens, Ohio. That's actually where the Ohio Bobcats are from. In a story from 2006, he admits to being an Ohio State fan. Now, that's a problem right there. He should not be allowed to officiate any Ohio State game if he admits he's an Ohio State fan. And also, in 2006, he was not permitted to officiate the Michigan-Ohio State game. So, why is he allowed to officiate in this one? Did he all of a sudden change his allegiance from being an Ohio State fan? I don't think so. Like I said, these officials could have came out and wear scarlet and gray uniforms for their colors instead of wearing black and white this day. The other guy, Bobby Sagers, the side judge, is also an Ohio native. Once again, not an issue. And was recently named to the Ohio High School Athletic Association Officials Hall of Fame, which is located in Columbus. So this guy is in the Official Hall of Fame in Columbus, Ohio. You know, I don't know, that one could be a stretch, but it seems to me this guy's an Ohio State fan as well. So why are these 3 allowed in this game? And why is the Big Ten not addressing this? Something is not right here. Something is fishy. And yes, I'm still really mad about Michigan and Ohio State just because of the fact Michigan's only won twice since the 100th game has been played. They won the 100th game, and they also won in Brady Hoke's first year. Jim Harbaugh has not beaten Ohio State yet. But if you take a look at the talent gap that there was there last year when Ohio State won 45-17 in Ann Arbor, and take a look at this year, that's now 30-27 in overtime with maybe some fishy officials, the talent gap is closed, and one of these years Michigan is going to beat Ohio State again, and it's going to go back and forth again, or Michigan will win 2 or 3 in a row, and then Ohio State will win 1, and then, you know, it's going to go back and forth again. It's not going to be this dominant force, which what Ohio State has had, you know, since the 100th game, or, you know, or actually a little bit before that, really, because Jim Tressel did end up winning a couple before that. So now let's run down the Big Ten Conference scoreboard, going to another topic before I get really angry. Iowa defeat Nebraska 40-10 Iowa finished the year 8-4, so they had a pretty good year, and they got another significant win. So I will say they did get another one. I thought maybe the Michigan one was going to be their only significant win of the year. They got another one over Nebraska. Wisconsin comes from behind to defeat Minnesota 31-17. They're off to the Big Ten championship game, where they'll face Penn State, who beat Michigan State 45-12. Michigan State 3-9 on the year. What's going on with the Spartans? I don't know. Indiana became bowl eligible as they held on to defeat Purdue 26-24. Northwestern doubled up Illinois 42-21 to become bowl eligible. And Maryland also became bowl eligible, defeating Rutgers 31-13. Bad year for Rutgers. 0-9 in the Big Ten. So, in fact, think about this. Western Michigan had more Big Ten wins than Rutgers. They had just as many as Illinois, more than Purdue, more than Michigan State this season. So there you go. Western Michigan. And, think about it. If in the Cotton Bowl, they were recently projected against Penn State. So that might change now. Penn State may not play in the Cotton Bowl. They may play somewhere else. What if Western has to play Michigan in the Cotton Bowl? Wouldn't that be an interesting matchup? Basically, it's the battle for the state of Michigan, because we know Western could beat Michigan State. They don't even have to play them. We know that could happen. The winner of the game would basically be the champion of Michigan, you would say. But we don't know if that matchup's going to happen or not. Let's run down the rest of college football from this past weekend as well. How about I almost said Oregon. How about LSU? They defeated Texas A&M 54-39. I was thinking Oregon because of Orgeron. Ed Orgeron has been named the new head coach of LSU. Les Miles said that's a great win. That he's able to get someone off of his staff to be the new coach there. Kind of got to wonder though. They got rid of Les Miles because they didn't want him. The way he was calling games offensively, maybe they didn't want the rest of his staff there. You would have thought that, but they hired Ed Orgeron, and I don't know if Ed Orgeron will keep the same staff or if he'll go out and find his own guys. We'll have to wait and see on that. Washington will be going to the Pac-12 title game as they smashed Washington State 45-17 in the Apple Cup. Big one for Western. Air Force beats Boise State 27-20, and Memphis over Houston 48-44. So that is great news for Western Michigan to go to the Cotton Bowl now. Now, Houston wasn't going to be a factor anyways, but they would have still been ranked ahead of Western. But they weren't going to be a factor because they weren't going to be going to the American Athletic Conference championship game. Boise State, with a win and a Wyoming loss, would have been going to the Mountain West title game, which, by the way, Wyoming did lose. So thank you, Air Force. We owe you a lot. And by the way, they beat Western in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl 2 years ago. So let that sink in for a little bit. North Carolina State became bowl eligible as they defeated North Carolina 28-21. How about TCU? They defeated Texas 31-9. Charlie Strong, of course, you heard, got fired last Saturday. Less than about 15 minutes later, they hired Tom Herman as their new head coach. He was Houston's head coach. I'm sure he'll lead Texas to great things. He was doing great at Houston. I'm sure he'll fill in the void at Texas just fine. I hope Charlie Strong, though, does find a good job somewhere because he is a good coach. He just didn't fit in with Texas, unfortunately. Hey, maybe he can go to Notre Dame if they fire Brian Kelly. I don't know. And it is possible that could happen. You're probably laughing at me right now. It's like, oh, they'll give him another year. 4-8 this year, but he has that academic scandal now under him where Notre Dame had to vacate wins from 2012 to 2013. It's possible Brian Kelly could be gone after this year. You never know. We'll just see if that happens. Number 1 Alabama defeated number 13 Auburn 30-12. No surprise there. Number 4 Clemson was all over South Carolina 56-7. Colorado will be in the Pac-12 title game as they defeated number 22 Utah 27-22. How about Colorado this year? 10-2. And I knew after I saw their victories in their first 2 games coming in to play Michigan, I knew this was going to be a much better, improved Colorado team than we've seen in recent years. In fact, 1-8 last year in the Pac-12. This year, 8-1. What a turnaround for Colorado. Just as big of a turnaround from what Western had when they were 1-11, and they went 8-5 the next year in the Mid-American Conference, and now they're sitting 12-0. So congrats to Colorado. Well earned. Great team. Their 2 losses, USC team who has been surging, and a Michigan team as well. Which, by the way, if Cepho Lufau had not been injured in that Colorado-Michigan game, it's possible Colorado could have walked out of Ann Arbor with that victory. Just saying. Kentucky, they defeated number 11 Louisville 41-38. So great win for Kentucky. They're moving their program in the right direction. USC all over Notre Dame 45-27. Florida State defeats Florida 31-13. How about Vanderbilt becomes bowl eligible? They had to defeat number 17 Tennessee, and they did it 45-34. Congratulations, Vanderbilt. You are going bowling. Oh, here's one for you. Navy defeats SMU 75-31. Navy's been putting up gaudy offensive numbers recently. Great to see for the midshipmen. They will be playing in the American Athletic Conference Championship game against Temple this upcoming Saturday. Looking for some other scores here. South Florida, who went 10-2 but will not be playing because they lost to Temple. They defeated Central Florida 48-31. Here's one for you. This may sound like a basketball score. Pittsburgh 76, Syracuse 61. Guarantee it, when those two teams face off in basketball this year, they won't match that score. I'm just saying. It's, ACC play, and those teams are old Big East foes. Big East not known for scoring points. They're more known for defense, if you ask me. Miami finishes their regular season 8-4. They defeat Duke 40-21. Mississippi State becomes 5-7. Possible bowl eligibility, maybe. 55-20 win over Ole Miss. And it's sad that we have to say 5-7 is bowl eligible. Sad nowadays that, if we win 5 games, it's possible we'll be bowl eligible. It's really sad to see that. I'm not saying that they should cancel the bowl game if, a team goes 5-7 and they can't fill it. I'm not saying cancel the bowl game. I'm just saying it's sad that we see 5-7 teams go bowling. By the way, there were 3 5-7 teams last year that went bowling. All 3 won. So if you're filling out your bowl pool later on when they come out with the bowl matchups, might want to pick those 5-7 teams. Just saying. And let's see, was there any other scores? Oh, how about this? Middle Tennessee 77, Florida Atlantic 56. No defense played in that game either. We'll say that. Marshall got trounced by Western Kentucky 60-6. Cal goes to 5-7. They defeat UCLA 36-10. San Diego State got beat up by Colorado State 63-31. San Diego State still the team going from the Mountain West title game to face Wyoming, which, by the way, lost to New Mexico, like I said, 56-35. And Hawaii gets their 6th win, but they're 6-7. They defeat UMass 46-40. I still think with Hawaii got 6 wins, put them in a bowl game. I know that 6-7 isn't bowl eligible, but I'd rather see a Hawaii team that actually got 6 wins. It's not their fault they had to play 13. I don't know why. It always seems to be Hawaii's playing 13 games for some reason, but they played 13. I don't care. Put them in a bowl game. They got 6 wins. Maybe that should be the requirement. If you reach 6 wins, even if you play 13 games, you're going bowling. I know, like, if you're a 6-6 team and you reach the conference title game and you lose, you're still going to a bowl game. So let Hawaii go. Just saying. All right, let's run down the NFL scoreboard really quickly here. Detroit Lions, Thanksgiving Day, defeat Minnesota 16-13. They're 7-4. They're leading the NFC North. They haven't won the division title since '93. They could well be on their way. Cowboys defeat the Redskins 31-26. They're 10-1. Steelers over the Colts 28-7. The Titans beat the Bears 27-21. Bears had several chances to win this game, but they dropped a lot of passes late. That's why they lost. Bills defeat the Jaguars 28-21. Ravens over the Bengals 19-14. Falcons all over the Cardinals 38-19. Browns 0-12 now. It's getting to the point where they're starting to look at maybe 0-16. They lost to the Giants 27-13. Jared Goff threw 3 touchdown passes. First 3 of his career. Saints trounced the Rams 49-21. Dolphins hold on against San Francisco, defeat them 31-24. 49ers have won 1 game this year. Chargers defeat the Texans 21-13. How about Tampa Bay shutting down Seattle? Defeat the Seahawks 14-5. Raiders come back after leading Carolina 24-7. They have to defeat the Panthers 35-32. The Patriots came back and defeat the Jets 22-17. Packers on Monday night defeat the Eagles 27-13, and the Chiefs beat Denver 30-27. On Sunday Night Football, that was a heartbreaking loss because Denver had played pretty well offensively in this game. Trevor Siemian 20-34, 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. He hit Benny Fowler late in the game to make it 24-16. It looked like, Broncos were going to win this game, but the Chiefs still had time. They moved it down the field. They scored a touchdown, which I know people were saying, that wasn't a touchdown. That wasn't a touchdown. His knee was down at the 1. He never had full possession until he got into the end zone. And so if you're bobbling a ball and you're on the ground, you don't have full possession of that until you fully have caught it. So it doesn't matter if his knee is down at the 1, he slides into the end zone. If he's bobbling it and then he doesn't get full possession until he's in the end zone, it is a touchdown. And they got the 2 and they tied it. If it wasn't for that safety early in the game, maybe Denver wins this game. They went to overtime. Denver kicked a field goal. Kansas City kicked one. Denver then attempted a 2 or 3 yard field goal from Brandon McManus. Didn't stand a chance. Kansas City moved it down the field, and their kicker Cairo Santos came on. Probably made the worst field goal. It's probably the worst field goal make ever, and I know saying that it doesn't matter. It's not going to say in the box score. He doinked it off the left upright and it went through. It's going to say, whatever yard field goal good. That's what it's going to say in the box score. Cairo or Santos, 35-yard field goal. That's what it's going to say, or whatever, however long it was. I wish he would have missed it because it would have been a tie. If it were me in the situation, where Denver was on the field, I know this would have been, kind of conceding at this point, but I would have punted it and see if the Chiefs can, see if the Chiefs are willing to try to drive down the field to get a field goal to win, or if they want to play for the tie as well. Because now with that loss, Denver is sitting outside of the playoff race behind the Miami Dolphins, who they've lost a tiebreaker to. They haven't played them, but they don't hold the tiebreaker over them. So that's why Denver's out of the playoffs. And if you punt, say the Chiefs try to drive down the field knowing that they're passing, it's possible you could pick off a pass, have your defense make a play, and then you can kick the game-winning field goal right there and you win, or, it ends up in a tie instead of going for that risky move. That's just me in that situation, because then right now we'd be still talking Denver's in the playoffs. Instead, we are not. So thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to my channel for more content. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description below. Comment anything you want about anything on sports in the college football or NFL world in the comment section below. Ask me some questions as well. I'd be more than willing to do a short little video to answer questions. Any questions you have in college football and NFL in a little special edition of Sports Talk. So Michael out and over and out. Mikey, screw you guys are the best. Take care. We'll see you next week for another edition of Sports Talk.